Tom Swetnam from the University of Arizona. Your work for decades in charting the fire history of this region is exemplary, and you did an incredible Twitter string, which is the modern form of putting your expertise out into the world. That caught my attention. Of course, I've had you on in my Dot Earth blog before. So when you saw those lightning smacks fires, and of course there's a broader landscape of fire problems in California. But let's maybe stay with this particular moment, this Big Bend and the redwoods in Santa Cruz area. What came to mind right away for you? Did it feel fundamentally new, or like back to what you knew so well? And you're muted as well right now.
Yeah, I've been nervous, of course, the last 10, 20, 30 years with rising temperatures and, what's been going on in California almost every year and almost year round in California, particularly about the redwoods, both the coast redwoods and the giant sequoias, the two species, that I've studied in some detail. They're sort of the ultimate of tree ring species, that they're among the oldest trees in the world and largest trees in the world, tallest, and they truly are magnificent. And it's been a great pleasure working in those, and an honor to work in those groves. But I'm worried about them because just naturally they're isolated and they're distributed in very small groves across the state, and they're at risk. Um, so I've been waiting for and worried about the time when we might see some really high intensity fires come through some of these groves and do some damage. And I have to say I have not been so worried about the coast redwoods because
Mm-hmm.
naturally, ecologically, they seem to be adapted to high severity fires. Now, yeah, you see on the Twitter feed there, I put an image of a fire scar. This is from a paper by Mark Finney, uh, working on tree rings, looking at the base of these trees. You can see these injuries from past fire events. They appear as a scar, a place where
Mm-hmm.
the tissue was killed. And what we've found in dozens of studies now in Coast Redwood is that fires burn typically less than 20-year intervals. Frequent fires in the Coast Redwoods, but they were burning low intensity and low severity, partly because they were burning so frequently. Um, and the thing about the Coast Redwoods, that's a real strong clue that this is actually a human controlled fire regime, is that there's relatively little lightning. I mean, this last fire bust with all the lightning is kind of the exception. I mean, it's rare to get this much lightning in the coastal areas. But with the fire frequencies that we see in the fire scar tree ring record in Coast Redwood, the only thing that can explain that high frequency of fire is that people were setting fires. And this stands to reason. It's known, actually. The indigenous people, the native tribes of California, know very well from their oral histories that they use fire. They use fire to manage these forests. So there was very frequent fire being put in these forests, which maintained them open and promoted the plant and animal species that the native people used and needed and depended upon. But at the same time, there's a tree ring record that shows high severity fire rarely occurring in these groves, and that shows up as a very strong release where the after a fire event, after a fire scar, very rarely these trees show a surge in growth. And what's happening there is probably as many of the understory trees are being killed by a high severity fire, not one of the low intensity frequent fires, but like at many 100-year intervals, you get these really hot fires that would kill enough trees that would cause a release in the overstory trees. So high severity fires are not outside of the realm of adaptation for coast redwoods. Now the giant sequoias is a different story. They basically are not adapted to recovering from these fires because they cannot resprout from their boles like the coast redwood. So the coast redwood, after you get a big high severity fire, will put on new branches and new leaves. Even
Right.
really heavily scorched tree will recover. But the giant sequoias, they don't seem to have that ability to resprout So frequent fires maintained open forests in both the sequoias and in the coast redwoods. But now we've had 150 years of putting fires out.
Right.
So now we're getting higher severity fires. So, long and short of it is, I think the coast redwoods are probably going to be fine with high severity fire events in coming years. The giant sequoias I'm much more concerned about, and in fact, there have been some high severity fires in recent years. They've been killing a number of the large sequoia trees in some of the groves. So we may be on the edge, and the clue of a big change will be if we lose one of these groves. So there's about 70 giant sequoia groves in the Sierra Nevada at about mid elevations, and some of them are like 6 trees or a dozen trees.
Yeah.
And if in coming decades we lose one of those groves, that'll be the proverbial canary in the coal mine.